Hey everyone, it's been a little while since the last development diary, so I'll try to get you all caught up. We've recently made some pretty remarkable progress. The update we released 2 weeks ago, which was 4 weeks in the making, brought us officially out of pre-alpha 1.8 and into alpha 1.0. If you watched our last dev diary, you saw a preview of what alpha 1.0 would bring. But in today's dev diary, you'll learn a bit more about what we've accomplished with alpha 1.0 and what was included in our recent alpha 1.1 update. Before we get into the details, I do have one announcement. The game has been pushed back for one final time. We're still on track to finish just about everything around our original release date in March, but we wanted a little over a month after completion to do some extensive testing so that we don't launch with any game-breaking bugs. So the new release date will be on Friday, May 13th of 2022. The good thing that's come from all of this is that the team was able to sit down and figure out the exact day we wanted to launch. So for the first time ever, we've got an exact release date, and one that we're very confident in reaching. This being said, let's start going over what was changed. So one quick addition right on the main menu is the Extras button. Here you can keep up to date with any dev diaries or news while in-game. Right now we're also sketching out some new ideas to make a more unique main menu screen instead of just having a single panel with a lot of wasted space, but more on that in a future dev diary. One of the most exciting parts of this new update is the full inclusion of the UK and Russian factions. Let's check out the UK first. Right now, only about a quarter of the UK's roster is being shown. In the coming weeks, we'll be expanding their roster and all the others until there's about 20 units to select from for every nation. Artillery and Cavalry has been added for all included nations, but we'll go over them a bit more at the end of this dev diary. One mission of mine when designing each nation's roster was to make them as unique as possible. To do this, I did research on the performance and structure of every European military of the mid-19th century, and found ways to exaggerate their historical tactics and abilities in order to give every nation a distinct playstyle. We'll spend an entire future dev diary going over these distinct playstyles that we've curated for every nation. Over to the right of this screen, you'll notice we've fully implemented our new Armory System. Players will now be able to drag and drop weapons onto their troops to either increase their amount of fire orders they can be given, or give them more range, or both. In this case, British soldiers by default are given Enfield rifles, though the player can swap them out for lower quality smoothbore muskets to save on points. The graphics for the Armory System are still being worked on. I'm not a big fan of how the rifles are squeezed into these small boxes, so we're thinking of switching them for square icons in a future update. Now, let's check out the Russians. Right now, they've only got a handful of units to select from, but they have the cheapest units currently in the game, allowing you to easily outnumber your opponent. Next, we'll check out the Germans, as we've added a few more units for them. Here, you can see we've added Württemberg line infantry, as well as Krupp guns and Uhlans. Lastly, we'll check in with the French, who have had their roster changed significantly from the last time. They've now got Zouaves, Foreign Legionnaires, Field Artillery, and Carabiniers. And instead of selecting from duplicate units armed with different weapons, such as Menet line infantry or Chassepot line infantry, you can now easily drag and drop your Menet or Chassepot rifles using the aforementioned Armory System. Before we get into the game, I'd like to show you an update we've done under the map options. We've added a new map titled River Path, and we've increased our max order count from 6 to 8, as well as the unit cap from 12 to 16. Our ultimate goal will be a 16 order cap and a 32 unit cap, though we may try to increase that even further in the future. Now, I'll load in with one of our new factions onto a brand new map, and I'll also buy some weapons from the Armory System to show you the system at work once we're in game. As you can see here, this is a massive improvement from our previous maps. A brand new map system was designed from the ground up by our developer Geo to achieve this. We now have 3D models, improved grass textures, improved foliage sprites, improved water, and improved lighting. I would say at this point we're ahead of schedule graphically. Of course, there are still several things we still need to add, such as improved shadows, additional lighting effects, more foliage and decorations, and critically, elevation. It is important to remember though, Fire Maneuver was never intended to be a game with realistic looking graphics, or graphics that could compete with games like Total War. Our main focus is releasing a game with fun and engaging gameplay first and foremost. I'll now check out those weapon perks I mentioned earlier. By clicking on each unit's flag icon, I can expand the UI to see what kind of perks they have. On the left, we can see a battalion using breech-loading weapons, so they can be given 2 fire orders. In the center, we can see a battalion using default smoothbores with no bonuses. And on the right, we can see a battalion using rifles, which gives them an additional tile of range. A recent UI change that I really like is a symbol which appears to let you know if a unit is entrenched, or if a unit is bogged down in rough terrain and is unable to move for 1 turn. You can see those here and here. Another thing I love about this new update is the inclusion of unique hands that hold your orders. Notice the Russian hand and sleeve, which is different from the French, German, and very posh British. Also, as was shown in the last dev diary, cavalry and artillery is fully functioning. For the Russians, we currently have the Cossacks in the game, which are unique in that they have the skirmishing perk, making them completely immune from attrition, as well as shock, making them great for hit and run tactics. However, they only have 4 squadrons and low cohesion, which make them quite squishy. There's actually some unique artillery pieces in the game too, like the German Krupp gun, which have special attributes like breech loading that allow it to fire multiple times, and disciplined range, which gives it extra damage. On top of that, the Krupp gun is classified as modern artillery in our game, meaning it has 5 range instead of the 3 that normal light artillery gets. The next thing I'll show off is the 2 new formations we've recently added, titled Open Order and Square. Open Order formation spreads your units thin, which decreases the damage they can do in ranged combat, but also means they receive less damage from the enemy. On top of that, they've got extended visibility, making it a great formation to hold down a more open position, and if you give them rifles, their coverage is increased by more than double. Players can also mix formations to create unique combinations. For example, players could create a historically accurate American Civil War regimental formation with an open order skirmish line in front, a closed order battle line in the rear, and a columnar reserve for a rapid response. Or players could create a historically accurate Prussian attack force where the front line comprises open order skirmish formations that absorb incoming fire, while attack columns are safe in reserve, ready to pounce forward and charge the enemy. The other formation that was added is Square. Square wasn't used extensively in the mid-Victorian era, though there are cases of it being used in the Wars of Italian Unification and a few isolated cases in the Crimean War. It was also used in a desperate last stand against the Zulu in 1879 in the Battle of Islandwana. In our game, the Square formation receives no charge damage, but receives additional ranged damage. In order to add this mechanic to the game, we had to add a brand new system called vulnerabilities, which change the amount of damage a unit receives based on its formation. Our game currently has the following vulnerabilities. Charge vulnerable, something open order and artillery has, which makes them less effective in charges. Range vulnerable, something march column and cavalry has, which make them less effective in ranged combat. Charge invulnerable, something that Square has, which makes them immune to charge damage. Charge resistance, something that the perk Disciplined Melee gives, which makes units with this perk receive 1 point of less damage in charges. And range resistance, something that Open Order formation has, which makes them receive less damage from gunfire. By adding this vulnerability system, it creates an interesting game of rock, paper, scissors as the player enters open order formation to defend against artillery barrages, but has to switch to square against incoming cavalry, and then has to switch to close order to defend against infantry. Players will need to constantly adapt to the situation unfolding, and the situation they think will unfold, as they complete their orders each turn simultaneously. And just when you thought we were done with this update, we've also added unique victory and defeat screens for every nation, fixed several bugs involving movement and hand-to-hand combat, and finally optimized the entire game through the implementation of mip-maps on all sprites, which lowers the resolution of sprites when the player is zoomed out. As a result, frame rate has increased for all of the developers by about 30, so now we're getting around 120 frames a second. Oh, and we've added some new graphical settings that allow players to turn off post-processing effects and reduce texture quality for even higher graphical fidelity. And that's it for 2021, guys. We've managed to accomplish all of this in just a month. It's honestly been an incredible year for our company, and I couldn't be more proud of our developers, artists, animators, and our very talented composer. I appreciate all of the kind comments, suggestions, criticisms, and support. And if you want to gain access to this new alpha build, you can subscribe to our Patreon page for as little as $3. Each month we host a tournament, sometimes with prizes, that you can join if you're a Patreon supporter. In our last tournament, players Boris and Alm King won first and second place respectively. With all of that said, Merry Christmas everyone, we'll see you in January.